Gracie Peterson. And I thought you just might be kind of lonesome to hear some good old Monmouth College songs. So call all of your children, and oh yes, your grandchildren too, and have them listen in. Oh, I well remember the day this song was introduced in chapel. That was way back in 1924. The students of the day really don't know what they're missing out, and they don't have to go to chapel every day. At least we knew what was going on, because we had to listen to all of those announcements. Well, I've changed the words to a popular melody, and I'm going to sing it for you. It's going to recall many things of long ago. They'll walk out through the town at night. The bonfires burn so very bright. We will have these moments to remember. The poles crack with the naked lads. The blanket crew, such fun they had. We will have these moments to remember. The Knox game at Thanksgiving time, the pig roast at the Teaks are just a few of the things I recall as we danced cheek to cheek. The candlelight at Christmas time in Second Church was so divine. We will have these moments to remember. I'm sure most of you will recall those days. I want to ask you a question. How long has it been since you've come back to see us? Well, let me tell you this. You're going to be real proud of your alma mater. Oh, the campus is so beautiful and so well taken care of. The new library and the science hall, the athletic field, and oh, the many colorful flower beds. Oh yes, and you must hear the new chimes. It would do you good to come. We would love to see you, especially for me, before I get any older. But you know, I live with beautiful memories of all of you. The shows at the Rivoli, the concerts and the 2 piano recitals, the glee club trips, oh yes, and the dances, even though we had to sneak out and hope to get back before we got caught. I'll tell you this, I read every line in the edition of Monmouth Blues. So do send us a letter and let us know what you're doing. And don't keep any secrets, because we want to know everything about you and about yours. And most of all, we need your love and concern, because you know that's what keeps us going. And you can feel very proud too when you say, well, I was very one of those lucky people who attended Monmouth College.
Please be seated. Welcome to Amazing Grace, one of the highlights of the 2007 alumni weekend at Monmouth College. I'm John Niblock, class of 1958, and I'll be your guide tonight as we pay tribute to a Monmouth College legend, Gracie Peterson. Gracie died in May of 2006 at age 104. We'll hear encore performances by some of the stars of the fabled Gracie shows of the 1940s and 1950s. Our own alumni choir has been rehearsing under the direction of Professor Sarah Graham, and will perform 4 numbers. Along the way, we'll hear classics by Rodgers and Hammerstein, Jerome Kern, and other popular composers whose music graced the Gracie shows. My father and Gracie were students together at Monmouth. Gracie graduated in 1922 from the conservatory, where she was known for her contralto voice, which you just heard there, as a soloist for the Girls' Glee Club and the college choir. I first encountered Gracie 32 years later when I arrived on campus as a freshman in 1954. There was a watermelon bust at the Second United Presbyterian Church, now Faith UP Church. We enjoyed watermelon and a musicale put on by Gracie. That show in the church social hall had lighting, scenery, costumes, and incredible student talent. The lady at the piano, Gracie, was a dynamo. She was banging out the music, cueing the performers with a nod of her head, leading us in group singing, and she even had a little comedy pattern that went like this. A college couple was parked at Monmouth Cemetery, naked, when the custodian came along. "You can't do that here," he said. "Why not?" said the boy. "The sign says we can." "What sign?" said the custodian. The boy points to a sign that says, "Monmouth Cemetery, get a lot when you're young." Gracie threw back her head and laughed an infectious laugh that made you join in and laugh too. Several other alumni will share special memories of Gracie tonight. You know, for almost 90 years, Gracie was an ambassador for Monmouth College. She's in the Guinness Book of Records as the oldest musician getting paid to play. As Casey Stengel used to say, you can look it up. And did you know that she played for the Monmouth Rotary Club for almost 80 years? At the end of every performance, Jimmy Durante would say, "Good night, Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are." Bob Hope sang, "Thanks for the memory." Gracie always said, "Vote Republican." She then attributed her long life to the GOP. Gracie liked to roll her R's, so when she said it, it came out, "Vote Republican." Well, our first number tonight is based on a popular radio show that began in 1941 under the title A Date with Judy. In 1948, a movie by that name introduced a song called It's a Most Unusual Day. It was sung by a new starlet, Jane Powell. Walt Forsythe of the class of 1950 first met Gracie in 1946 as a college freshman. He performed this number as the opening number in the Gracie shows of the next 4 years, and even a 5th year after his graduation. 40 years later, Walt and his wife, Rosemary, walked into Melling's restaurant where Gracie was playing. Without dropping a beat, Gracie segued into It's a Most Unusual Day. Walt will be accompanied tonight by Leo Raymer of Monmouth. Leo's a talented, creative musician and a very patient guy. He usually works with a younger crowd. Leo will accompany the choir in most of the musical numbers tonight. So here's our opening number, as it used to be in the Gracie shows, It's a Most Unusual Day by Walt Forsythe.
As John said, we opened this in 1949, and I was seated over here in the audience, and the house lights went dim, the spotlights came up, the choir and Gracie were back here, and we thought we might redo that again tonight. I would go over there and sit down and come around here. But by the time I got to the steps and came up the steps, I was out of breath. Such is the difference of 58 years. I woke up singing this morning, got out of the right side of bed. I woke up singing this morning and wondering what was ahead. I took one good look at the sun, and was I
Well, it's a great alumni weekend. I know you enjoyed the seminars, the alumni parade, the awards banquet, the get-togethers for the Teaks and Pi Phis, and the reunion classes. Our thanks to Lucy Kellogg Thompson, Director of Alumni Relations, and her colleagues on the college staff for setting up a great alumni weekend program. As I say in showbiz, let's give that little hand a great big lady. I'm staying on campus in Bowers Hall, a great new facility, about 5 or 6 years old. There's only one problem. Some woman kept banging on the door to my room all last night. Finally, at about 3 a.m., I got up and let her out. Dr. Roger McKay, of the class of 1950, is going to share his memories of Gracie Peterson. Roger was part of a fabled Teak quartet in the late 1940s. Roger's a retired educator and the research director emeritus of the Grosse Pointe, Michigan Public Schools. As you get older, you know, you get emeritus every so often. Okay, Roger McKay.
Thank you, John. You may not realize, John, that I am approximately the 10th choice to do this tribute. But I'll do my best. So much has already been said today and in the past about the extraordinary slices of Gracie's persona, represented by ordinary words we've heard many times before. Words like masterful musician, dedicated, inspirational, creative, boundless energy, young at heart, ebullient, idealistic, rapport with all generations, loyal to church, college, and country. All true. But what I have chosen to do today is to give you a new perspective, something you may never have heard before and may not understand when you hear me try to explain it to you. The first time I met Gracie, way back in 1946, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Who is this? I wondered. Can all laughter and smiles and crazy comments be real? Can anyone be this way all the time? And Gracie was, always on stage. That's the only way I knew her, but she was that way every time I saw her. Like the best of the old-time piano players, you could hum a tune for her, and she'd bang it out on the piano with all the harmonies and chords and then ask, "Is that the way it goes?" To understand my story, you'll have to know just a bit about the way I was when I came to Monmouth College almost 61 years ago. I was 17 years old, just out of high school, hopelessly immature. I had no self-confidence, even though I was a decent student and was okay at sports. I couldn't dance. I was afraid of girls. 3 members of the greatest generation watched over me and did their best to mentor me, and one, I believe, is here tonight. Hi, Bob, don't wave. I had a good musical background and I could sing, but I didn't really have a solo voice. I didn't have a rich baritone like Floyd, whom you will hear right after I finish, a great tenor voice like Bill Shields, who isn't here tonight, and couldn't belt out a song like Walt Forsythe. But I could blend with a group, and so I sang in the chapel choir, and may still hold the all-time record of having appeared on the stage every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday morning at required chapel. I was a member of the college choir, a member of the chorus in Gracie's shows, and became a member of the still famous T Quartet, because I could produce a hard falsetto for the top part, even though I was really a second tenor. And I now have to say the first T Quartet, because I heard another one at the T banquet that I just left. The T Quartet traveled many places with Gracie, and Gracie finally decided I should try a solo. I was terrified. As terrified as I was in Dean Liedman's required speech class. So what did Gracie decide to do? She had me play the part of a little boy. She had me sing, and I've never heard this song ever since I left Monmouth College. She had me sing The Dicky Bird. The dicky bird whispered, haven't you heard? Spring is here, spring is here, spring is here. So many times I became sick of it. Then Gracie decided to put some black gum on my teeth and have me lisp and mug my way through all I want for Christmas is my two front teeth, oh, my two front teeth. Audiences loved it, and I hated it. All right, that's the end of the parable. Here comes the moral. Not until years later did I understand what Gracie was doing. I was just a little kid, 17 or 18 years old, and so she had me act the part. I learned to stand up and play the part again and again and again until it became sort of second nature. No more fears, no worries, no problems. Just do it, just like Nike. And now, well, I've given lectures at universities, speeches to hundreds of people, conducted workshops and training on an educational topic I've learned to know a great deal about, how students learn to write and how they should be taught to write. And since I know a great deal about that, no fears, no worries, just do it. And that's the side of Gracie most of you may know nothing at all about. She knew how to inspire confidence, how to teach someone to perform, and how to make you better than you ever imagined you could be. That's the side of Gracie I remember best. So, thank you, Gracie, and not just for me, for the hundreds of young people you helped grow up and become better than they ever thought they could be. So bless you, Gracie. You live on in the hearts and memories of countless hundreds.
Yes, Gracie touched the lives of 3 generations of Monmouth students. Floyd Hirschberger of the class of 1949 is going to sing 2 popular numbers from the Gracie Show. He will be accompanied by his wife, Joyce. The first song is A Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square. That was a popular British romantic song written in 1940 by Manning Sherwin and Eric Meschwitz. Floyd's second number is Sentimental Journey. That was written in 1944 by Bud Green. The recording by Doris Day and Les Brown and his band of renown was one of the biggest hits in World War II. It was popular with soldiers stationed overseas. Floyd was another member of the T Quartet of the late 1940s. So here with A Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square and Sentimental Journey is Floyd Hirschberger. Boy, you still got it. With a script by Jeff Rankin, and with photos, videotapes, and recordings from the college archives and Gracie's relatives, Bill Wallace, professor of communications and theater arts, has produced a sort of a newsreel to show us how a legend began. Gracie Peterson, this is your life. Well, actually, that stayed afloat. The year is 1902. It's a year before the Wright brothers will make their historic flight of Kitty Hawk, and Henry Ford will introduce the Model T. Teddy Roosevelt is in the White House. And Scott Joplin is delighting the public with his newest ragtime composition, The Entertainer. On March 2nd, near the Muskwake Indian Reservation at Dysart, Iowa, Charles and Josephine Gothrop welcome their 6th child, a girl named Grace. Large families are the rule back then, and Josephine will eventually have 7 more children. The Gothrops are ordinary folk and just manage to get by, living off the land. When Charles hears talk of more fertile soil to the south, he packs up his family and moves to Missouri. Conditions are not much better there, and soon the Gothrops move again to Monmouth. Monmouth College today can rejoice in Charles Gothrop's decision to come to Monmouth, for he brought with him that small girl, that ordinary, unassuming middle child named Grace. No one then, least of all herself, imagined what a remarkable life was in store for her, but it would prove to be amazing. Amazing Grace. Growing up on the east side of Monmouth, young Grace and her sisters Veda and Vera would walk each morning to Garfield School. As she would pass by the Monmouth campus, which was considerably smaller in those days, Grace would admire the imposing dome on the New Wallace Hall, and the stateliness of the auditorium, and the recently completed Carnegie Library, never dreaming how familiar those buildings would become to her in future years. An outgoing child, she enjoyed school, her friends, and outings like church picnics. Though possessed of modest means, her parents were fun-loving and instilled in Grace a special zest for life. She remembered particularly the Chautauquas held each summer on the college campus. A large tent that would seat 3,000 was erected, and people would camp out for 12 days to hear such luminaries as John Philip Sousa, William Jennings Bryan, and Billy Sunday. Once, when one of the speakers asked for a volunteer to sing, 9-year-old Grace promptly stood up in her chair and sang "A Volunteer for Jesus." As a reward, she received a New Testament, which would accompany her on travels throughout her life. That she would volunteer to sing in public at such a tender age did not surprise anyone who knew her. While her siblings seemed less than musically inclined, Grace was born with music in her soul. She began performing on the family's old pump organ, playing by ear as 2 of her older sisters worked the pedals, which her legs were too short to reach. She began taking piano lessons and gave her first public recital at the age of 10. Throughout elementary school and later, she would travel with her teacher from school to school, performing in music classes. During high school, she kept 2 jobs. One was playing for sheet music customers at Caldwell's department store, and the other was playing piano for the silent movies downtown. Also during high school, she met a handsome young man who would later share her life and dreams, Harold E. Peterson, 6 years her elder, whom she affectionately called Petey. A sailor, a professional wrestler, and most important, a good dancer, he captured Grace's attention as no one else could. After graduating from high school, Grace entered the Monmouth College Conservatory of Music in 1917, where she met the second most influential person in her life, Miss Edna Browning Riggs. A perfectionist and a taskmaster, Miss Riggs did her best to correct the unique style of piano playing Grace had developed largely on her own. Yet she was impressed by the natural ability of her ingenue, and she convinced Grace to begin teaching piano to other students. In 1921, a year before she would receive her degree, Grace started teaching at Monmouth College, a career which would span a half-century. But busy as she was in the classroom, her thoughts kept straying to her handsome young wrestler. On Christmas Day, 1925, Grace and Petey were married. Petey started an appliance store in downtown Monmouth. Instead of settling down in the marriage, however, Grace teamed with her younger sister Alice to form the Gothrop Sisters. Alice's husband, Roy, and Petey would drive the budding artist to county fairs throughout the Midwest, They even performed in Chicago at the Edgewater Beach Hotel for the founder of the Maytag Company. With the arrival of Alice's children, the duo split up, and Grace found another outlet for her energies. She directed the choir at Second UP Church and initiated an annual candlelight service, which for 20 years was the highlight of the Christmas season in Monmouth. During the 40s and 50s, Grace's affinity for the stage was rekindled. As sponsor of the College Glee Club, she produced extravaganza after extravaganza with stage shows at the Rivoli Theater, offered twice a year with titles such as Music Gals and Scandals. The revues became the most sought-after ticket in town. In 2002, at a gala birthday party at the Orpheum Theater in Galesburg, the nearest place that was big enough to hold the crowd, alumni and Gracie fans from throughout the country flocked to celebrate her centennial year and honor her career. If you were there, you may have recognized some photos from that event. And that, my friends, is how a legend began. Our next performer is a veteran of 8 Gracie shows and also sang at Gracie's funeral last year. Carol Toll is a Monmouth native who was a member of the class of 1952. Gracie once told Carol the secret of life. She said, "Always keep up with your music, kid. Music keeps you young." Carol now lives in Connecticut. He has selected 2 numbers from the Gracie show. They were written in the 1930s. One is "The Song Is You" by Jerome Kern and Oscar Hammerstein for the Broadway show Music Is in the Air. The other one, "I'll Be Seeing You," was written in 1938 by Sammy Fain and Irving Cahal. It was popular during World War II among GIs shipping out for overseas duty. Later generations may remember it as the theme song for Liberace's TV show in the 1950s. So here's "The Song Is You" and "I'll Be Seeing You" by Carol Toll.
Cathedral bells were tolling, and our hearts rang on. that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's light and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you.
Ralph Whiteman's connection with Gracie Peterson goes back 75 years when they both attended Second UP Church here. That friendship intensified during her final years while she was in a long-term care facility. During his weekly visits, Ralph read her mail to her, answered correspondence, and brought her news of her beloved college. Ralph Whiteman, you know, is a man of many facets. He's one of the go-to guys for the class of 1952, which is having its 55th reunion this weekend. And as Monmouth's first student center director, he set a number of records. He was the first person to send me on a motorbike doing 20 miles an hour into the chain-link fence around the football field as a stunt for the halftime show. The score there was Lions 1, Christians nothing. Ralph was also the first person to use a team of skydivers for the opening act for the Scott Olympics. You remember the movie Sideways? Well, that's about 200 feet above the field. They met a strong wind, and that's the direction they went. Instead of landing on the 50-yard line, they crashed about a block away. One broke the rooftop TV antenna of a beloved tavern owner. The other hit his garden and took out all the bid lettuce. And who can forget the time Ralph brought the Illinois Midget Auto Racing champion on campus to drive his car as the pace car for the 1965 Scott Olympics. Great idea, Ralph. Too bad the uniformed pit crew and driver couldn't get the car to start. And I think earlier in the day you heard about his stellar performance as guardian of the bronze turkey. Did I mention that Ralph is one of the architects of our program tonight? Be afraid. Be very afraid. Here with the remembrance of Gracie Peterson is the inimitable Ralph Whiteman.
That could be mercifully the end of my speech. The title of the speech is Spirit of Monmouth and Gracie Peterson. So Spirit of Monmouth equals Gracie Peterson. That would be a speech in itself. But you're not that lucky. Among Gracie's many notable and diverse accomplishments, she was a senior Olympic competitor. Here we see her in training. She made the cover of Geezer Jock magazine as the Female Athlete of the Year. I think she used the same steroids that Barry Bonds is using. We even have her competitor's bib and number from her competition. And the significant thing there, it appropriately states her philosophy, living life to the fullest. And Gracie would be a poster child for that philosophy. We also have her picture posing with other senior Olympians. She was a senior Olympian. She actually competed in the Performing Arts Division, a virtual talent show.
She was the first contestant on the program, and as we dressed her in her patented trademark sequin dress and high heels, unfortunately the sequin dress was about as old as Gracie, and the bra strap broke. With two minutes until curtain, panic sets in. The judge, a young female TV anchor, and I are operating at 911 speed. Luckily, the safety pins hold, and when announced, unruffled, Gracie makes her regal entry to the bottom of the stage steps, where she awaits with her hand held out, maintaining her air of elegance. The flustered MC got her message as he raced to take her arm and help her up steps. Seated at the piano in all her grandeur, she appeared to be getting ready to play for the spellbound crowd, when suddenly she grabbed the piano mic and said to that big city audience, "Say, I want to tell you folks about this little town of Monmouth where I live. And we've got this adorable little college there too." And she did a multi-minute commercial on Monmouth. Audience, of course, is cracking up, and then she proceeds to play flawlessly a 3-song medley. She told me beforehand what she was going to play. I remembered, but she didn't. The 3 medley that she played, none of them were the songs that she taught me. So she was winging it all the way. That, my friends, is talent. Gracie got 3rd place, but she received the only standing ovation from the crowd. A crowd of people came up afterwards to say, "Hey, you played at my grandpa's funeral 15 years ago. Or my daughter's wedding 11 years ago. Or I heard your patriotic speech at the Legion Club in Lido." It was a long day, and when we got back to Monmouth, north the city limits, about 11 p.m., all pooped out, the emergency lights were flashing on the south side of town. And Gracie says, "Come on, kid, let's go see what's going on." What Gracie wanted, Gracie got it. The emergency, somebody burned the toast. That's a long story, but it shows you a lot about the person we honor tonight. Tireless, fun-loving, classy, talented, enthusiasm for life itself. That's a typical picture of Gracie playing for an alumni choir, mainly made up of the class of 52, the 55 reunion class this weekend. And this brief commercial message. My class had to do that. There are so many Gracie stories. I'm sure most of you have your favorites. My assignment tonight borders on horrendous. I got to cover 104 years of a very active life in 3.5 minutes, and I'm already behind. Quick incidents. Gracie's funeral was exactly 1 year ago yesterday, and according to her long-standing order, she was buried in a Monmouth College sweatshirt. A sweatshirt that she had provided the funeral director about 15 years previously, and which he hoped he could now locate. Advanced planning was another of Gracie's attributes. Apparently, Gracie is still at work for Monmouth College. St. Peter just enrolled 2 of his angels in Dr. Grimm's music classes for next year. Like Dr. Disler, St. Peter is always trying to improve his institution. That's Gracie, ever the salesman for Monmouth College. Hope you have your imagination working, because we want you to get this picture. At about 102, Gracie was on display in the hospital wearing, are you ready? She is wearing a gray poodle skirt, 102, bobby socks, a passionate pink sweater, and a big bow on her ponytail. She looked like an 18-year-old cheerleader, and she enjoyed every minute of it. If this music thing hadn't worked out for her, she could have easily been a model. She had a hard time giving up her music, got to be a bit of a problem. Either they couldn't get her to start playing, or they couldn't get her to stop playing. And she did start. Here you see her at her duty station, feet up, man and ready. She didn't get very far away from her piano. Gracie got so she dug her heels in pretty good in her final years. She pretty much had in mind what she was going to do and what she was not going to do. A question: how many of you have received a wedding invitation from a queen and attended a royal wedding? Well, Gracie did, and here's a picture to prove it. Gracie went to the Netherlands for the wedding of a former Monmouth College student and a Dutch princess. Royalty came easy for Gracie. She may even have invented it. Can you picture the two queens meeting? We hear a lot about student involvement these days. In this picture are three of Monmouth College legendary female professors who could have written a book on the subject of involving students. Gracie, Dr. Dorothy Donnell, and Professor Mary Crowe. One of Gracie's favorite things was to travel and then give travelogues on the many places she had been. During one such talk on a trip to Mexico, where in the remote reaches of the country, the rambling old train crossed a bridge, where underneath quite a few nude men were bathing in the river. Her parting quip in describing the scene was, those guys were pretty well equipped too. One of the loves of Gracie's life was the Monmouth Rotary Club, a love that was mutually and equally fervent. As you have heard, Gracie played the piano at weekly Rotary meetings for some 80 years, or stated another way, that's over 12,000 songs that she played for Rotary. As you can see in the picture, Rotary never forgot Gracie, even after she was hospitalized. Here a contingent of Rotarians sings her birthday greeting from the club. From the stern look on her face, the Rotarians would not be getting her American Idol vote. It then comes as no surprise that Gracie Peterson was the first person on Monmouth campus to receive the Spirit of Monmouth Award voted by the students on the Student Center Board in the 1960s. She was also the first resident to receive a community honor entitled the same, the Spirit of Monmouth, by a series promoted by a local institution in the 1970s. She also is in the local grade school's Hall of Achievement. These are but a few of the well-deserved lifetime honors that the Grand Dame of Monmouth received. While music was her main thrust, Gracie Peterson was not a one-dimensional person. Neither was she a stuffy saint. She knew when to be funny and when to be serious, and she could do both equally well. She was truly a friend of all. As Lincoln at Gettysburg paraphrased for Gracie Peterson, the world will not long remember what we say here, but it will long remember what she did here.